Get off my lawn!
What's up, everybody? Welcome to MtG Dad's podcast. My name is Blake, and I'm here with Stefan. What's up, dude?
Hi. Hey, what's up? How's it going? I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, big same.
We're
big
recording
same.
a little late at night. You can see in the back.
It is because I spent like an hour on technical difficulties only to find
Yeah.
out that my computer was just not fanning the CPU.
It's too hot. Too hot for TV, truly. There's a millennial reference that many people will not get.
Hey, if you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you turn notifications on so that we get to annoy you every time we upload a video. Also, there's a link to our Patreon campaign down in the description of this video. You can go there, check out all of our extra content. And with that out of the way, Stefan, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, Blake, Canadian Highlander is a format that's been around for a long time. And over the course of the time that the format's been around, there have been decks that have sort of become staples and then have seen escalations and de-escalations in power and popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the decks, you and I kind of discussed this beforehand, that we saw that had seen such a huge rise and then an enormous plummet recently was the Sorenson Tempo deck.
Sorenson Tempo.
Which
We're
is
talking,
named after,
named after Robin Sorenson.
yeah.
So we're talking straight Simic. It's blue-green. It's Quirion Dryad. It's Mana Gorger Hydra. It's Daze Brainstorm Stifle. Your CMC caps at 3.
Oh yeah.
This
Berserk and
this deck plays 30 lands, and the whole point is to just jam a thing and like either grow it really big or give it evasion of some sort and just make your opponent dead and protect your life total and your threat with counter magic.
yeah. How much and I think that deck runs a ton of counter magic. Like at its peak it was running something like 20-ish counter spells.
No, most definitely. When you're locked into 2 colors like that, like especially in those 2 colors, you don't have many options for like just general good stuff cards.
Yeah, there's no kill spells in green or blue.
So like you don't have actual removal spells. You have stuff that bounces permanents. Like
Boomerang.
Well, I was just gonna say, was there an iteration of this deck that was playing Boomerang? Because man, give me a Boomerang on the play.
What's the one that pings your opponent for 1 when you bounce something?
A Vapor Snag.
Vapor Snag. Yeah, Vapor Snag absolutely played.
One of my favorite standard decks of all time was Island Go. And so you be on the play, right? You play an island, and they go and they play their land, and then you play an other island, and you boomerang their land.
Oh. There's that
it's
green
just Time Walk
spell.
plus.
What is it? Temporal Spring?
Oh, which is like 3 mana boomerang?
No, it's not boomerang. It returns it to the top of their deck.
Oh! You know what? That is one of the worst feelings. Like,
yeah.
Subtlety has this rap for being like the worst of the evoke elementals.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Man, have you ever had your whole turn just put back on the top of your library? Is there a worse feeling?
You just like
you don't even get a
okay,
draw a card now. You don't even get a draw a card now.
They now have perfect information on what I'm drawing. I can't fetch because I need that card. Like at some point I'm just like, all right, fine, it's gone. It's on the bottom of my library. It was never happening.
We're just gonna forget that this ever happened. So
we're just gonna forget.
Yeah, so Sorenson Tempo, when we first started the Lawnlander circuit, Jacob Scott, who is a 4 or 5 time top 8 competitor.
Yeah, and
very, very skilled player. Oh, he's a 1-time winner too, right?
One-time winner. Yeah, he's qualified.
The only time that Travis hasn't won. So I think for the first 1 or 2 tournaments,
at least the first.
I think it was actually the second. Maybe I could be remembering wrong. First one,
the first. I know it.
First one, I think he played team, or second one, I think it was just straight Sorenson Tempo. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but anyway,
I could be wrong, but yeah, so this was almost, no, it was over a year ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was 2022.
Yeah, over a year ago. And that doesn't seem that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but how many busted cards have we had added to the format since then?
Just a ton.
Like green in general has kind of fallen out of favor. I say that when combined with the blue cards.
Yeah.
So for a long time in the interim, it was Jeskai.
Mm-hmm.
So the green cards aren't good enough. We need actual removal spells. So cut green, and then we add red and white in their place, and we get really good threats like Monastery Mentor, and we get the red cards too, and then instead of playing all these crappy bounce spells, we get to play actual removal spells and swords and path and palace jailer and things like that.
Lightning bolt.
Yeah.
The thing is, the deck operates in a way like the original conceit of the deck was such that it really operated as like, what's the ceiling for these cards? And so it was like, okay, I can play mana dorks, I can play creatures that are going to grow just naturally by me playing my game plan, and because I only need a threat, I can protect this one threat with everything in my heart.
Yeah.
And in that way, it sort of feels like Boggles.
I mean, it's not entirely different. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's happened since then in terms of like, well, obviously we saw like we needed to do the Jeskai thing.
Right. I mean, we're not even all the way there yet. Now, currently, Jeskai has even fallen out of favor.
Exactly.
And it's 4-color pile. So we added green back into the Jeskai deck.
Yeah.
So you still get to play your Tarmogoyfs and what other green cards are they even playing? 4-color Omnath, and then most recently you get the new Aragorn.
Yeah. Busted.
Simply cracked.
Yes.
You get access to Uro and Oko.
Right. The most powerful cards.
Yeah.
And like Minskin Boo, Renin 6.
Right.
Literally the best cards in the game, and you just have all of them.
Right. We've gone from 2 colors to cutting one of those colors and adding 2 other colors.
Yeah.
And now adding that color back in. So it's just a 4-color pile of like no bad cards deck.
So the reason that we were able to do that, and this is sort of, I'm able to pinpoint with pretty precise.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
It's the Triomes.
The Triomes,
right?
Yeah.
The Triomes, yeah. These cards are so messed up in allowing decks to operate smoothly because before Triomes, there was a single fetchable Triome. It was Murmuring Bosk.
Oh yeah, the
Abzan
tree folk land
that comes in tapped, and it was only a forest, so you could only fetch it with a forest. And it pinged you whenever you tapped it for white or black. And that card was so bad it was unplayable.
I don't know. I put it in a lot of commander decks.
Oh, in commander, sure. But yeah, every other mana base was so clunky in its 3 and especially 3 and 4 colors. Like there was no conceivable way that these would function.
Yeah. So something that I really hate is Triomes specifically.
Right.
But you always have to put it in your deck because there's going to be that turn where like you don't have your turn 1 play, or like you can just go fetch it late, and then like later on in the game when you don't need that mana, you can cycle it away for a fresh look at a card. And like the cards are just absolutely insane. And the really, really awesome thing is that like you would think that having your lands come into play tapped would be like a detriment to this sort of like tempo-y game plan where you want to use all of your mana every turn and you want to cast more spells than your opponent, but it doesn't, because like the Sorenson tempo deck's points were like recall True Name Nemesis, whatever.
Treasure Cruise, Mana Drain.
And now you don't need those cards because all of your threats, like whether it is an initiative creature or a Lelia the Blade Reforged or a Palace Jailer or an Omnath or a Planeswalker like Minskenbu or Oko, every single one of your threats produces additional cards.
Yeah. The mana or the card advantage comes not from drawing additional cards. It comes from
the cards themselves. Yes.
Yeah. So your quality of cards has just gone so high.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, like if you look at the old Sorenson decks, the card quality is like almost standard level, like except with the exception of like dual lands and ancestral recall
and power. Yeah.
A
lot of the cards are like, oh, they're standard, rares. You would put this in your standard deck, like Grotog back in the day. Like the actual Quirion Dryad deck is like, this is a standard deck. It never really saw play in Legacy. It never really saw play in Modern. But here we are. I actually think Grow is a pretty good pre-modern deck.
It is,
just like you have Psychotogs and Quirion Dryads and stuff, but that's kind of beside the point. Which I guess
it's not beside the point.
Pre-modern is sort of a standard power level, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's just like old standard,
Very much. It's like what, type 1.5. Yeah. Like at one point, the extended decks.
No, it'd be like original Legacy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Back when Legacy and Vintage shared the same ban list.
Right.
Like Vintage's restricted was Legacy's banned. Mm-hmm. This is how Mind's Desire became banned in Legacy before Legacy existed.
Because it was on the Vintage restricted list.
Yeah, because it was on the Vintage restricted list, which is a very funny story.
Here we are, and we don't need to play any of those lower quality cards anymore because we have this absurd mana base that allows us to just do whatever we want. We don't need to put our points into recall. We can just play a bunch of Moxen.
Yeah.
And the card quality is through the roof. We get to play only the best counter spells, only the best removal spells, and only the best threats. And like, this is one of those decks where when you put this deck in the hands of a capable pilot, and they have some amount of knowledge, and like, I think your fetching sequencing matters a whole lot. And like, you have to know, like when you draw your opening 7 and you look at specifically the lands that you have, like, am I going to be able to play a game of Magic with X lands that are in my hand? So not necessarily looking at the card quality you have, but the lands rather, whether or not you're actually going to be able to play a game. And like, you put a deck like this in the hands of a capable pilot, like, how can they even lose?
Yeah, it's when you're playing a deck that is effectively every top deck can get you out of almost any situation.
Yeah.
It's better than any counter spell. And the deck is transformed from being like almost hyper reactive, where like your only proactive play is the creature, and then everything from there on out is reactive, aside from like going over, like being able to push through damage like a berserk or whatever. Everything else you're doing is just totally reactive. Now we get to play proactive things.
Yeah.
Like we get to have a proactive game plan.
And the cards themselves snowball out of control very, very quickly. You don't need cards like Berserk.
No. Lelia is just good.
Right. They snowball out of control really, really quickly. And if you can't deal with them, right away, like the game just ends. But it doesn't end. You have to watch it, slowly end over the course of several turns.
It's that snowball effect of like, okay, it's over. You can kind of tell, aside from like some specific outs,
right? So like, considering that we have had so many new cards printed in those colors, like, is a deck like actual Sorenson tempo, blue-green tempo, is that even viable anymore?
This is exactly what I was wondering. Because the new 4-color decks aren't tempo so much as they are just like very good mid-range decks.
Yeah, no, they're very good mid-range piles. Yeah.
Yeah. And the tempo decks flourish in a environment where there's a lot of combo decks and especially a lot of all-in combo decks. So Storm, Flash, Hulk, to a lesser extent like Pattern Rector and Seeker Walk. The latter two have creature plans as well. So like obviously not dealing with those kind of sucks.
And all of those decks have also gotten new tools recently, and
Exactly.
and points changes have affected those decks much more so than decks like Sorenson Tempo.
Agreed.
But like if you put Sorenson Tempo versus the 4-color Omnath pile, like which deck actually sizes up better? Because I feel like while the threats in the 4-color pile are in general much better, and they're much more diverse, Sorenson Tempo, like you could just keep a hand where it's just like chaining counter spells together after you resolve your Query on Dryad, and like, oh, sorry, I have a counterspell for your 3-mana thing. Here's a counterspell for your 4-mana thing, and your Query on Dryad just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Like, you can win that game.
I think so. Honestly, we discussed, the card advantage comes in the form of the cards hitting the board, and if they don't hit the board, the card advantage just vaporizes.
Right.
Whereas Sorenson's card advantage comes from a hand. It comes from being able to play draw spells at instant speed. It's going to play. I think it's one of the decks that really utilizes Dig Through Time well.
Sure.
And honestly, it may be time for something of a renaissance, as long as so Sorenson has a lot going for it. So we sort of talked about some of the negative things. Some of the positive things are, like you said, the mana base is so incredibly painless.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Oh, the other thing is like you have that consistency. Like you're playing 22 mana counterspells, or whatever it is. Like you're gonna have 3 or 4 of those in your hand at all times. I feel like what matters the most here is whoever has more cards in their hand.
Correct.
Because the 4-color deck also has counter magic. So if you're not as much, but some, and it's only the best ones. So if they're using their counter magic to counter your counter magic, which is trying to stop their stuff from coming into play, like whoever has more whoever has more cards in their hand at the end of the day is probably going to have an edge in the matchup.
Yeah, it will require a very good pilot, because the counter spells that you're trying to hold up in a lot of ways are protecting that threat, right? Your threat light, which is sort of like one of the downsides. So many more threats in our format now. But in a deck that, if you build the deck correctly, there's a lot of green cards that have gotten printed lately that allow you to dig for creatures, that allow you to dig for threats. And I think you sink into green a little bit more. You go for like Once Upon a Times, you go for some of the more like odd 1-mana green spells that let you dig for creatures or lands.
Yeah.
Like that abundance card.
Right.
Those kind of spells are going to have I don't think Sorensen ever got to play with those.
Maybe, I don't know. Has he been working on this deck recently?
I don't think so. He was on 4-color in the finals last year.
Yeah. So kind of what I was thinking is like the Gruul Monsters deck, specifically in our meta, has been performing very, very, very well.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, what if you just substitute the red cards in that deck for the blue cards? Like,
sure,
you're obviously fundamentally changing the way that the deck functions, but you still have all of those really, 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 really solid green threats, and all those really, really like solid mid-rangey green cards like Oko and Uro and etc.
Yeah, I think what we need to look at is what is the mana value that we're trying to look for, because like before it was very lean.
Right.
I think now we go up to 4. I think we go up to 4 drops.
Yeah, so, and you can still play your 20 counter spells or whatever.
Yes.
But now, instead of putting your points in recall, you're putting your points into Moxen, you're putting your points into Soul Mana, and you're cranking out things like Questing Beast.
Yep.
And like trying to get the job done that way. Like it's still a tempo deck, because like tempo is kind of like the way that it's defined has changed a little bit, because tempo is kind of like, yeah, sure, it's a mid-range pile, but like tempo is like having more cards in your hand than your opponent, and your ability to like multiple spell over the course of several turns and just play more cards than them.
Yeah.
And keep keep your hand full.
We also need to consider that like there are creatures now that protect themselves very well.
Yes.
That don't require that investment of cards to keep them around or give them an evasion. Like you said, Questing Beast is a card that has evasion, haste, the ability to deal with your opponent's threats, and like does provide some modicum of card advantage in that it's going to remove your opponent's cards from the board.
Yeah.
Something the deck now has trouble with. So we're going up on mana value. Going up to 4. I think we cut mana dorks too. We don't play. We play the good ones, right? Like Iggy and Noble and Deathrite Shaman and Birds. None of the bad ones. Your 1-drops are largely relegated to your card selection. So stuff that's gonna find you the things that you need to play the game appropriately.
I don't know. I'm kind of off of cantrips right now. Like, still, you're in blue. You're probably playing Brainstorm and Ponder.
Oh, absolutely.
After that, maybe it gets a little bit questionable because like
we're not doing sleight of hand.
I think you want to be putting things onto the board, and I could be wrong here, because part of the power of that Sorenson Timbo deck was playing a Quirion Dryad and then just playing 3 cantrips and making it into a 4/4.
I don't think we're doing that anymore.
Right. Right. Like that costs you well, at least 1 card. I guess the cantrips can replace themselves, but it also costs you 5 mana. Whereas now, if you just put 5 mana into a thing, like you get a Thrun.
Exactly.
Like
there's also
is that better or worse than Quirion Dryad?
There are green creatures now that grow whenever you play a creature. Like there's there's green creatures that whenever you cast a spell, you get to draw a card. Or there's just Ledger Shredder. Like Ledger Shredder is a perfectly good and reasonable threat to play in this deck. There is also Back to Basics, which is a card that
that's fun.
So underplayed, it's sort of absurd. And it's one of the cards that people play around Price of Progress and they play around
Blood Moon and Wasteland.
Sure. Have you ever played against a Price of Progress?
Oh, you mean a Back to Basics?
Or Back to Basics.
You mean a Back to Basics? Not in Canlander before. I have been got by Back to Basics and Legacy several times, though.
Yeah, it feels bad. It feels very bad. The game effectively is over. Now combine that with like any way for like blue to tap things for you. Blue also has the ability to do crazier stuff now. It has the ability to play enchantments that give you the Monarch, right? There's the Fall from Favors.
Sure.
That is a removal spell and a card draw engine in one. There's what's it? The when you blank all creatures until end of turn. Dress Down.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Dress Down. Totally. Like that card is criminally underplayed.
It's very, very good.
Yeah.
I think the single best answer to the fast initiative starts out of some of these decks is like, just, oops, sorry.
You just
cool 3/3.
and like you just get to. I think the deck also plays Stifles, like where you just get to stifle.
You know, I love to stifle somebody.
I think it's one of the few decks where it's like you can play Stifle Bird, you can play Stifle, and it needs to lean into its ability to function on a painless mana base, on a consistent mana base, and instead of loading up on loads of cantrips, we just play the good ones. Instead of loading up on tons of mana dorks, we just play the good ones. And then you curve out naturally while maintaining like some amount of cards. You know, you have cards in hand, you have mana up. So that if there's a relevant thing, you can deal with it. You don't have to deal with everything, just the things that matter.
Right.
And then you kill them. And any deck that tries to get funny, that tries to get cute, like Flash Hulk or like Storm, just dies to you.
Right. Well, like against those combo decks, like most of the reason why the tempo decks are really, really good against them, because like you need two counter spells usually, and that's usually good enough.
Yeah.
The thing is like you also have to have a clock because most of these decks have enough redundancy that they can do the thing again. So unless you have 2 more counter spells, you're going to need a way to kill them in the interim. Like
The exception being like the Thoracle decks, which, let's be honest, is sort of unplayable right now.
Yeah, I agree.
That deck is rancid. Like I wouldn't touch that deck with a 10-foot pole. But the ones that are generating infinite mana or are, you know, storming off, those are the ones that, you know, if you you know what card's really good against that is endurance. You just get to endurance them or scavenging ooze them. And
man, I'm kind of getting hyped. I kind of want to build this now.
Okay, yeah, so this is sort of like my impetus of like you know, $1 Million Man, where this deck has sort of morphed into the 4-color thing. What if we bring it back? We rebuild it.
Right. Make him. We can rebuild him. We can make him bigger, better, faster, stronger.
Yeah. And we make our boy Robin proud of us, where, you know, we revive a deck that is sort of one of the. I don't think any deck is ever dead in the format. Truly.
No, you just have to get really creative.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do is you need to have somebody else like this guy right here and just make a podcast and talk about it, and then you get all kinds of ideas.
Yeah, and I think
the world is your oyster. Bob's your uncle.
I think it could function and it could come back. Like, despite some middling showings recently, there's some decks I just really want to see come back. I want to see Sorenson come back, and we can do more episodes about this. I think the Kiki Pod deck, I kind of want to talk about that. Like, Josh
top aided with that last the spring.
Yeah, and there was a Kiki Pod
spring.
The Kiki Pod element was in the Naya deck.
Oh, that won the winter LCK.
Yeah,
you're right.
Jake's thing had the Kiki Pod, and so it sort of morphed into that. But what if we bring it back to its roots and, you know, examine what it was versus what it is now, and like how we bring it back to that. Sorenson is sort of the big one. Storm is one that I think we need to have a real discussion about, because
oh man, I tried so hard.
You and I have had, ladies and gentlemen at home, if you're listening to this, Blake and I have talked about Storm so much.
We have literally wasted days, not hours, days of our lives.
Oh yeah.
Trying to make Storm a functional deck.
The most garbage Storm decks where we're like, well, what if we do this and like shape it to the meta? Like,
and so we're not talking about like Slushy where you have a Storm thing, or like Reanimator Storm where you have a Storm thing. Not like that. Actual Storm where you're like ritual, Yogg will ritual kill you.
Yeah. I want to cast Yogg's Will. Obviously DT is off the table, but or like if you're in an LED build, but if you're an LED, then you're automatically in Breach. I want to see one with just Lotus, Yogg's Will. Any other two things.
You know, I always think about that modern deck, the modern Breach deck, where it goes off. Right. It goes off with Emery and like the Mox Amber.
Opal. Amber.
And Mox Amber and like Mishra's Bobble and the blasting station.
Yeah, it's blasting.
Is that what it's called?
You got it.
And then like you gotta play the One Ring.
and then that deck wins with Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah, I mean it's still kind of a Storm thing, right? Like,
yeah, it just doesn't.
That's how. Well, I guess that's not how Jeskai Slushy wins, because they brain freeze themselves until they have enough to brain freeze you.
Yeah, the brain. So that deck functions much more as like a gifts intuition pile.
To be fair, though, isn't that just better than Thassa's Oracle? So like if brain freeze was legal in Modern, wouldn't that just be better than Thassa's Oracle? Yeah, okay. Well, there's a reason why Underworld Breach is banned in Legacy.
Correct. Yeah. It's just better Yogg's Will. They're like, what if Yogg's Will?
There's so many cool Storm cards, and then you just mulligan a bunch, and it's not fun.
Yeah. you kind of have to get really cute with Storm to win. And honestly, like at its height, when Storm was at its peak, it was running Lotus, Yogg's Will, DT,
which is like. Well, how many points is that now? 7. That's
12.
13. That's 13.
Is it?
Yeah, Yogsville's 2.
No, it's 1 now.
Oh, it dropped. Okay.
Yeah. So it's 12. But still, the deck was mostly a combo, and the combo was getting DT and Lotus. Well, it was really just getting DT. Then you DT for Lotus, you cast that, you find your
So I
source
think
of
I think
riches.
Yogsville is the key card there.
Yeah,
that was,
sort of.
that was way before Underworld Breach existed, though.
Yeah, but the deck was lightning fast because DT just added this whole other element of play to the deck where you were just searching for this one card, really.
Right.
And from there you just got to get funny with it. And like if anybody wants to watch like a Rad Storm deck, go back and watch, like, I think it was 2017 Canadian Highland Championship where Jeremy White was on Breach Storm, and I think Wheeler was on Lotus Storm.
It's a Storm mirror match.
No, they don't play each other, but it's like it's
two different decks in the top
they're
eight,
making their way through the top eight.
That's what made Breach go up.
Yeah, and to be clear, Jeremy on stream bricked hard.
He did, yes. I actually remember watching this championship.
Yeah, but I think, like Sorenson, we just have to retool those decks to make them relevant.
Yeah.
The problem is that most people have abandoned Sorenson because of the triomes, because threats have gotten better, because you don't need to protect a threat now. You can just play another threat that's just as good.
Right.
I think we just need to adapt to that. I just really like the idea of 2-color decks lately.
Yeah, it does go back to what I was saying about Gruul. Like, Gruul is performing very, very, very well. Like, you don't really have to worry about Wasteland. You don't have to worry about Blood Moon. Like, and then your deck is just lands and spells. Like, you just find a keepable hand. Like, you don't have to worry about your mana issues. You just have to worry about, like, do I have lands and spells in my hand? Okay, let's go.
Yeah, no proper interaction or like sequence. While they're sequencing for cards in hand,
sure, yes.
There's not a lot of tutoring.
A lot of those, those matchups, where it's like your racing style matchup, like it comes down to your decision trees and things like that. But the deck building matters much less. Like, yeah.
Your card selection isn't as important.
As long as you're not playing a bunch of really garbage cards to try to make something work, your deck selection matters much less.
I think Cody and I's deck in the last championship differed by something like 10 to 15 cards. It was actually a pretty significant difference. And still we both did pretty well. Like, I ended up 3-2. He was 4-1 coming out of Swiss. Yep. The deck performed wonderfully no matter what. And I just want to see Sorenson take a bite of that pie.
Yeah.
Just look at what are the best cards that we can play. How do we really take advantage of this? And kind of bring it back. Like, let 4-color be its own thing. Bring back green, blue. See if we can kind of transform it.
Hell yeah. Sick. We got a giveaway to do.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So two episodes ago, I don't know, it was way earlier in August. We're giving away one of the Lawnlander playmats, and we actually already did the drawing before the episode. So the winner is, drum roll, Jacob B 2153. Favorite pet card is Tassiger, the lucky winner of the Lawnlander playmat. So you need to shoot us an email, mtgdadspodcast@gmail.com, and let us know how we can get you your playmat. We appreciate everybody's entries into this. Had a lot of really good ones. Factor Fiction, Hogak, Maulock,
Hogak,
Cavern Harpy. Cavern
Harpy. Now there's a good one. Ooh, give me that Kavu, the one that bounces a green or red creature. Baby.
We'll be doing more giveaways real soon.
Oh yeah.
In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the channel, comment down below, let us know how we're doing. We'll see you guys in the next one, and we just want to remind you that we're proud of you.
We're proud of you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Love you. Kiss kiss.